Welcome to the Mortgage Broker Podcast, tailor-made for Canadian mortgage industry professionals. Proudly presented by A Better Way Mortgage Group, this podcast is your trusted source for insider insights, market updates, and strategies to elevate your career in the ever-evolving world of mortgage brokering. Whether you're a seasoned broker with A Better Way Mortgage Group or an industry enthusiast looking to stay ahead, our episodes are designed to empower you with the knowledge and tools you need to excel in the Canadian mortgage space. All right, we're back for another episode of the Mortgage Broker Podcast. And today we are getting into our year in review podcast episode. This is an episode that we look forward to. It's a recap of the previous year, all that we achieved, not only from a podcast perspective, but also as a brokerage, Better Way Mortgage Group. We've had some incredible success. This was a record year. And, we look at this record year built on more than anything, our people, our agents, the lender partners that help us achieve these results. Our process and performance is, all a part of that. And so we do want to touch on that. And for, our listeners that, are maybe not a part of a Better Way Mortgage Group and, not really want to hear us brag about our team and our agents, there's certainly going to be a bit of that today. And so we just want to preface some of that up front. But, this is all good stuff. This is all a good sign of, an improved year from 2024. I think a lot of brokers and brokerages outside of our network and our group have also had record years. So yeah, it's kind of an opportunity to talk about that and talk about what's to come. And what's to come is obviously, a lot more exciting this year than where we were at this time last year. So a little bit different format, just the fact that it's more of an internal podcast with myself, Jason Marshall, and Deryk Williamson. We're just going to riff on this and talk about some cool stuff and what's to come. So yeah, welcome and let's get into it.
Yeah, the thing that stood out for me in 2025 with the brokerage was really just the general positivity amongst ourselves, lenders, industry partners, and primarily our agents, right? Like if you think back a couple of years, our industry took a big hit, and that was people that did 40 million going down to 20 and people that did 10 going down to 5. And it was a very real challenge for people to work through that. And, it was a tough year. It hurt people financially. It made people question their own abilities in the industry and in the business. And to me, that's the biggest piece, is the overall positivity that came out of last year. Everyone kind of found their groove again. Most people got back to their pretty typical volumes. A lot of people exceeded their typical volumes. So it's really just been an awesome 12 months to get to work with our agents, see them continue to improve. That financial burden or hardship is certainly in the past for most people. And, again, this is because our agents are digging in. They're digging into the tools, the training, the collaboration in our group is it's endless. And, we're going to talk about everything that we did in 2025 from an event and training perspective, for sure, for anyone that's not familiar with that. But that was really cool to see, right? I'm sure you guys would agree on that, but there's just so much positivity, and that's really trailed over into 2026. Business planning, we've heard from so many of our agents about their plans, their goals for this year, and everyone's hungry and eager to get at it. And I found, in the last couple of years where times were a little bit tougher, it wasn't as exciting, January 1st. So I'm excited for what's to come.
I'd echo that. Like, there was such a different buzz right from the get-go of this year. As you guys both mentioned, we'll get into a lot of the events and the training that we did, but, the feeling that you had at some of these events that we had this past year was just different. It was, people were more excited. The attendance was a lot better. And it was, our events would sell out quick. People would show up early. They'd stay late. They'd be talking. They'd be collaborating. Like, I just felt like an overall different element of excitement that brokers had this year. And they were, engaged and wanting to dig in more and learn more and be better. And all of these great numbers and stuff that we're going to talk about in this episode, none of that happens without our agents really buckling down and taking advantage of a lot of the things that are out there. So definitely a fun year.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. It's kind of felt more like a counselor relationship with our agents in 2024. It was a tough year for sure in 2024. This year was far more positive, and I think that's probably a big reason why, looking at our events, looking at all all the activities we do in person and all the calls that we have with our team and, brokers out there in the industry. We go to pretty much every single event across the country when it comes from an industry perspective. And, I felt much of the same at all of those events too, right? Just in general, there's a much more positive environment. And, I was actually just talking to Dustin Woodhouse just the other day about his upcoming event. And he said the same thing, like just the general buzz is far more positive. And he actually put it in a pretty interesting way. Like brokers came out of this like high from 2020 COVID years and just making more money than ever, busier than ever. And they almost felt like, you just go back down to such a significant drop that it was like such a shocking drop. But now we're just back to like kind of a more normal, market, which was more kind of consistent with like 2018, 2019. And I think, getting to the end of 2025, people are just like kind of getting back to more of a reality as a mortgage broker and like, hey, this is just how we operate. And you think about all the changes that have happened, and we're going to touch on that with, the FinTrack regulations. Like we had a full year with all of that, all the changes that we know are coming. And again, I know we're going to talk about the rate climate and the more business we're seeing on the alt side. Brokers are realizing like, I have to adapt. I got to change. I got to like start doing things differently. And that's part of like just the general coaching culture that we've seen a big shift in. Like people are looking to get more educated, looking to get better, looking to figure out how to, continue to stay where they are from a stack perspective in this more real environment. So yeah.
I was going to say it's kind of a good segue into, we're going to touch on just the environment through 2025, right? Like the market environment, what we saw, saw brokers going a little deeper on. I mean, all things considered, rates came down to a much more normal level, a much more affordable level for people. And, that's a huge barrier. And I think sometimes we forget that 2 years ago, rates were 6.5%. We forget how challenging that really was and why that was such a barrier for borrowers, right? And it wasn't our fault that volumes dropped. So, hopefully rates stay relatively stagnant as to where they are, because I think it's a reasonable, cost-effective product for borrowers to get into homes or refinance or what have you. Market conditions, I mean, this is an interesting thing because it doesn't matter where you look. You just scream shitty market everywhere you look. The news, newspapers, everything, values are down, sales are down. But the interesting piece is that, pretty well every agent that we have within A Better Way was up last year, right? So that's just telling that, I'm very grateful to be in this industry compared to others, because it doesn't matter what's going on in our industry. There are deals to find. You just have to know where to look, which leads into the next piece. I mean, our group specifically, we saw a pretty significant increase in alternative and private business. And that's telling of the times, right? Like it's harder to qualify, people have more debt than ever. And that's where these products really come into play, right? And I think historically, a lot of people that built their book of business on prime and only prime kind of went like, I'm good. I don't need to learn this other type of business. And, through the tough years, people realize maybe I do need to learn that type of business. And we've been doing a big push on that for the better part of 18 months. It's like, if you're not playing in this space, you need to play in this space. We've hosted tons of training on this stuff, how to sell fees, how to lead up that conversation to an alt client. But yeah, that's been a huge improvement. And I think brokers are really starting to engage in those markets. I mean, reverse is another one that I should have mentioned. Reverse is huge. It's a different product, but there's so much opportunity there depending on where you are regionally, right? Like I know BC market, Ontario market, there's a ton of opportunity in that. And it's cool to see. I think that's another kind of driving force of the positivity and excitement. Like people are recognizing like, holy, there's this whole other world of lending that I never engaged in my, first 10 years of my career, that they're starting to understand and really see the value in those products for their clients. So the last piece I was going to touch on is just the renewals, right? And going into this renewal wave, I think some people thought there was going to be a lot more business than there really was. I mean, the harsh reality is that, on a good year in this market, you might win 20, 25%. Like that's a good number of your renewals. But at the end of the day, I mean, there's over 1 million renewals this year alone in 2026. I mean, if you can capture 20% of your 100 renewals, that's 20 more deals that you're going to have access to, more commission, more families served, right? So I think some people have a little bit of a negative connotation on the renewals because they're not winning as many, but you have to recognize just the sheer volume is opening up so much more opportunity for brokers in this market.
You hit the nail on the head there. I mean, everywhere you look in the media sources, it's all negative, negative, negative. And there is a lot of opportunity. We've seen that just in our numbers and, individual agents within our group having, banner years. And I think not only have our brokers and, likely a lot of brokers within the industry really stepped up their game, but I think the lenders have really stepped up their game too. And the sales reps and the BDMs that have come out and, really done a good job at explaining what their particular lender does as a niche and where to find the business and how to find the business. I mean, one thing that I found, which has been really cool, is lenders weren't just coming through for us this year and saying, here's a product dump. This is what we do. This is how, our rates and all that. They're actually teaching people how to go out and find business and source business. So those opportunities had started coming up quite a lot more for our team. And, not to circle back on all of the events, but of course we do a ton. But from an industry perspective, I think the industry was doing a pretty good job in putting some of these things on the plates of our brokers. And, I'm always going to shout out a Better Way Brokers because, Dean, Deryk, and I go to every single event that the industry holds. But one thing I find is people will come up to me and say, geez, is this at a Better Way event? Because all of your brokers are at all the industry events and really taking what the industry is providing. And they've just circumvented that negativity, took that positively, and really tried to re-identify their business. And I think that's where, when we look at this as a very successful year, I think that's where a lot of that's been driven from.
Yeah, I mean, like just looking at like deal creation opportunities and where lenders have started to play a role in that, and that's been a big focus for us, especially when we talked about just these two buckets of self-employed, business for self transactions and reverse mortgage transactions. Like, you're not competing with your typical bank on those types of deals. And I mean, there's such a huge increase of folks that just can't get approved at banks that are in that segment that, it's funny. It's like self-employed lenders. You're going to think of like your Equitable banks, Home Trust, like the typical alternative lenders. Like when we first started kind of working with those lenders years ago, like it was like previous bankruptcy, hadn't paid taxes. Like that was the type of demographic that they were working with. And it's like, those are exactly who they're not looking to work with now. And it's like, average credit score is 720. It's like truly just like, the income is really where, you're getting into these scenarios that fit there. And that's really what the banks are turning away. And to not have competition in that space, why wouldn't you be focusing on that space? So yeah, so moving on, like the big picture headline, record year for us at A Better Way since inception. So, A Better Way launched just over 11 years ago, had some obviously record years throughout the COVID years, had some down years after COVID from a perspective of the high. So to have not only a record year, it is remarkable because it was also substantially higher than the previous record year. So yeah, why don't we just kind of dive into some of the numbers and just have a quick look at that? And again, like I think a lot of people in the industry, outside of A Better Way are probably having similar type, percentage of increase here. So let's dive in.
Yeah, so year over year, we're up by 1.3 billion, which landed us at a total of 4.1 billion for 2025. And, the cool thing about that, I mean, you can talk billions and millions all day, but the cool thing that we like to look at is, how many additional families did our agents serve? How many people did we help collectively? And the number is quite substantial. It's over 1,900 additional families were able to get a mortgage through In A Better Way agent in 2025, which is just so cool. And sidebar to that, mortgage, life, and disability insurance, which is such a key component, a significant number. We're up 300% on MPP sales compared to the previous year, which, at the end of the day, we just look at that and that's 300% more families that are protected from the unknown, right? Which is really cool to see.
Like, obviously a huge kudos to our agents constantly leveling up, like what we talked about, the events, making a presence there, trying to get better, trying to educate themselves, find a way to, just do more business or help more families, constantly looking to integrate the tools, tech, and training that we provided at A Better Way, DLCG, the Canadian Mortgage app, Velocity, Gold Rush, all these pieces play a role in this success. And so much more of that to come for 2026. We got some really cool stuff in the works when it comes to getting more business, implementing these tools and the new AI tools that we've been putting a lot of work into, especially from a DLCG perspective. We're talking millions of dollars of investments into these segments. So that's, of course, plays a part in all of this.
Yeah, I mean, looking at 1,900 plus families served, I mean, that's really the end goal. When we look at this is, how many families are we helping get into, a mortgage or, change their situation? And, when we look at growth of the company, I think, you look at it in one of two ways. It's the brokers that you have in the company building and expanding on their own business with all the tools that Dina just mentioned. But you also look at what you're bringing into the company. And, we've been fortunate this year to bring in some of the top talent from some of the banks that are inevitably our competitors from the mobile mortgage specialist side and, other brokerages from within the industry. And, that's also kudos to our brokers because our brokers are out there saying, hey, this is a great place to work and a great place to be. And you guys should be a part of the culture and take advantage of some of the things that we're doing from, a macro training perspective. So, we've had a lot of substantial growth this year from outside in as well as inside out. And, that's really helping us serve, the Canadian mortgage family.
Another really important piece in this is, to be able to scale is one thing, to be able to grow is one thing, but like, can you scale without chaos is very important. And especially in the financial industry where, things can go array pretty quickly. I just want to touch on, some of our team and some of the improvements that we've made and some of the really key hires that we brought over. So Justin Noda is one to mention, actually the most recent fellow that we brought over from another brokerage. So he's our Chief Compliance and Operations Officer, like just ample experience. We've done podcasts with Justin. So if you want to know more about him, you can go deep on that one. But a really, really key hire this year, supporting us from a compliance perspective, some operational components of that, but really heavily is focusing on the compliance because we're in the business of protecting our agents. And the compliance in this industry is constantly changing, constantly getting harsher. And at the end of the day, to my point, scale without chaos. How do you manage that without an effective team behind you, right? And we never want to put people in a position where, we're growing and there's 4 billion and, maybe there's 1 trillion, but if the backing isn't there to support them, we would never feel comfortable with that. So that's one piece. Yeah. Secondly, so we brought over an EA and communications manager, which is Nilafur Pereira, absolute game changer for us, really buying back our time, allowing us to spend more time with our agents on proactive, productive conversations. Rhea Balaba has been a huge resource. We've really improved our onboarding department in 2025. Just massive, massive improvement. I mean, Jason's on the front lines of that. He can speak to that as well. We also introduced a BRM role, which is really to support a white glove onboarding service after the broker has been onboarded. These BRMs are there to work day in, day out with the agents, work on transactions, but also all the tech, the tools, the systems, everything that comes with a Better Way. It's really to hold their hand, for the first few months to make sure that everything is dialed, in their face and they know exactly where to go for any task that they need. And Daniel Spears was a big part of 2025 as well, which was our AML officer, consultant, 25 plus years of strictly AML experience, so he's seen it all. And, AML and FinTrack being a new piece for our industry, we just couldn't take that lightly. And listen, we knew that we were not AML specialists and we weren't going to be able to learn it over the course of 6 months. So we took the approach of hiring someone with ample experience. And he's really, really helped us, get our policies in place and build a roadmap for what we need to achieve and to support our agents.
Great points from a team perspective. And that plays a big part in the podcast as well. We had Justin Noda on the podcast really towards the end of the year when he started with the Better Way and forecasted that he's putting together his own show, which, cool enough, that's actually come to fruition. We have a few episodes in the bank. The next episode after this one will actually be his launch episode. It's going to be a really cool series that I'm looking forward to and just really kind of going behind the scenes of what's going on in that department. It's a very serious part of our business. I don't think I'm saying anything too offside with saying that I don't think our industry's done a great job at preparing us for what's to come there. And I mean, to give everyone some slack, it was a massive change. And this episode will probably be a lot different next year, just kind of touching on what that impact really was with audits and things like that starting to occur from a FinTrack perspective. So, Justin's really going to help anyone that's a listener that's, not with a Better Way, but especially a Better Way brokers, just really be prepared and be protected when it comes to that space. So looking forward to that. And I think that's a good segue just into the training and the education that was really behind the growth this year. And I think here is just really, to shine a light on, these results come from, the investment of your time in learning and putting yourself forward. So, why don't we just touch on a little bit of this, when it comes to our lender and business training presentations that we hosted this year. Believe it or not, we hosted over 95 lender presentations alone. And, that's a repetitive culture that we have every Tuesday, staying up to speed with lender policy, what's new, what are things to look out for. Deryk handles all of that in conjunction with Justin. So maybe we can touch on that and just all the other training sessions that we did this year. And, obviously a lot more of that to come for 2026.
Yeah, I mean, the lender presentations are, they're a key component to our business. Our job as brokerage owners is to get our lenders in front of the brokers as much as humanly possible through events, virtual training. So weekly, we have multiple lenders joining us for 30-minute slots. Great sessions. They're all recorded for anyone that can't make them. We did 22 separate business sessions. So just an example of a couple of those, we had AI specialists come in. We had social media marketing folks come in to help train our agents how to improve. We do business planning sessions. We did an alternative lending session towards the end of the year that really honed in on, the communication to an alternative client to ensure that you don't lose that client throughout that process. We could go down a rabbit hole, but if you're in a Better Way agent, you know all about it. If you're not and you want to hear more, we're always hoping to chat. Another example of something that we launched in 2025 was actually a U.S. lending program. So it's a referral program with Neo Home Loans in the U.S., licensed in every state of the United States of America, and it's been a real success. It's a true referral program. We're obviously not licensed there, so it's a handoff, but just a really cool value add, right? We've seen over the years a lot of people, snowbirds, if you want to call them that, moving to the US or buying secondary homes down there. Lumen 5 launched. So this is a really cool AI social media marketing software that we've launched internally. And I can't remember the number. I think there's 60 or 70 of our agents that are engaged in that, utilizing that. Really, really cool software and discounted pricing for everyone that's on there. Tuesday memo. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this get it. So we actually put together a memo every single Tuesday with industry, market, economic updates, kind of a few key bullets, try to make it short and to the point. We'll typically share a podcast in there as well, but that's a memo that goes out to anyone that wants it. And I was just talking to an agent a couple of weeks ago that actually just takes our memo, revises it a little bit in ChatGPT, and that is his weekly real estate email that goes out. So just good quality content that people can capture and utilize for whatever they want in their own business. 52 weekly updates. So this is something that is we're resilient on, but a weekly email that goes out every single Monday that is a deep dive into anything important, brokerage related, industry related, summarizes all of our weekly activities, events, training sessions, a weekly tip that, is just something that a broker can quickly take and look into and engage. So that's a kind of quick highlight. We'll get into the events and some of the podcast stuff as well, but those are just some key internal pieces that we wanted to cover and share.
Yeah, just to provide some clarity and context around the weekly updates, those are internal emails we're religious on right until, those are being sent on, I think Christmas Eve got one of those things. So very important to our team to really know what's going on in our brokerage, like Deryk mentioned, but of course the industry. The Tuesday memo for anyone listening that's not a part of A Better Way. I mean, we talk about this regularly throughout the year. That's an open industry tool that you can subscribe to and receive those emails. A lot of similar stuff that we include in our weekly updates would be featured there as well. But there's some really good authors in this industry. When you think about Mortgage Logic News, Dustin Woodhouse and his Sunday blog, David LaRock, big fan of his content. Dr. Sherry Cooper, big fan of hers. We had the pleasure of having her on the podcast as well. That is really what's driving the Tuesday memo. Is it's really highlights of all those blogs. I always just want to give credit to the folks that put so much time into those blogs and those emails. That really is where that content's driven from. We're just really highlighting, very small snippets of that content. And if you're not subscribed to, really the source of that content, Bruno, the coffee morning brew, is also a big source of that content. Like, I highly, highly recommend subscribing to all of those blogs. Hey everyone, Dean here. Quick timeout from the episode to share with you the ABW Tuesday Mortgage Memo, your weekly market highlights sent directly to your inbox every Tuesday. This is certainly one you're not going to want to miss, so make sure to sign up now. You can do so with a link in the show notes, or you can head to joinabw.ca and sign up there. This is a high-level summary of market developments, regulatory updates, and housing trends every Tuesday. So hope you enjoy it, and back to the show. Getting into kind of the podcast stuff, before we really go deep into, to some of the highlights of the podcast this year, for anyone listening, especially at Better Way Brokers, we're recording this podcast, which is a little different from what we're used to. We record all of our podcasts in studio. This one, we're recording virtually using some software that I would say most podcasters are familiar with, the Riverside platform. We're going to be doing more of this type of stuff. And, Justin Noda, located in Calgary, his podcast is going to be on the virtual forum. So more of that to come. And a lot of our brokers have reached out. We've had the Behind the Broker series, hands down our most successful series that we've done on the podcast. It's definitely got the most views, the most engagement, the most compliments. We're going to be doing more of that. So a lot of our brokers that were featured on the Behind the Broker series do want to make their own podcast, have their own content. We're currently in the process of doing a big renovation on our studio in our office. We have studio space in Toronto, of course, that we've done recent podcasts on. And then again, this virtual platform. So more content to come from us and our team. And really excited about that because it's just going to give our team that much more of a platform and the industry that much more resources and content to learn from. So getting into the podcast, I mean, we've become, I guess, a bit of a voice in the industry. It's kind of weird to say that, but Jason and I had spent quite a bit of time out in Ottawa and in the East Coast for various events and whatnot, MPC in Ottawa. It's kind of weird to have people come up and say hello that I've never even seen before. You kind of stumble and wonder, like, do I know this person? But it's all because of the podcast. So, hey, we just want to say, like, we appreciate you guys coming up and giving us thanks and whatever compliments or advice you could give us. We're all ears. So, don't hesitate to reach out to us or say hello if you see us. Jason, I'm sure you probably got some comments on your hairdo.
Yeah, I get a ton almost daily. So thanks everybody for that. Just one piece to circle back on, and I'll jump back to the podcast in a sec, but on the training and education side, the content comes from you guys. So throughout the course of the year, we get feedback from you on what sort of things that you want to look at and be trained on. And we take that in and then we build around that. So keep that stuff coming. We're open to anything. And if you guys have anything that you want to hear of or listen of and learn of, just bring that to us and we'll put something together for you. So just wanted to make that note there. So because it's a big thank you to you guys for actually providing the roadmap for what we should be presenting on. Now, on the podcast, I mean, it's kind of one of my favorite things to do, actually. I mean, we've had a really fortunate ability to interview some of our top brokers within a better way. Those have been really eye-opening. Like, you really think that you know somebody well until you sit down and have a podcast with them. There's lots that I could point out, but one in particular that blew my mind was with her G driver and just the process that she used in her business. I thought I knew a lot about what she did, but at the end of that podcast, I was like, holy smokes, does this lady know what she's doing? So it's been really cool to be able to see how each individual builds and operates their own business and where they came from to where they are. So I've really liked getting to know the brokers on a deeper level like that. And I'm looking forward to those continuing to come out. Some of the behind the lenders, I mean, getting to know some of the executives that operate behind the scenes that, perhaps we don't see or hear from on a day-to-day basis, but just listening to their path along where they started, again, like the brokers and where they've got to, has actually been pretty incredible to hear some of these stories. And it actually really, in my eyes, it really humanizes people. And it shows you that, hey, everyone's here to help and everyone's here to grow. And there's no need to be scared or worried to talk to any of these people or introduce yourself to them at events, because they're just people, they're awesome people, and they're always here to help. And the podcast has just been great. And, even some of the behind the network stuff that we've been doing and learning how DLCG operates in the background. We've had Chad Gregory was our most recent guest from the DLC group, and he talked about his experience in sales and how he overcame fear of rejection and stuff like that. Like, that's real stuff from real people, and it's been pretty fun to go through that whole process and to really learn on a deeper level on how things operate.
One series that we only did one episode on, and we've only done one episode in this particular series since the inception, is the Behind the Legend series. We had the pleasure of interviewing John Webster at the very beginning of 2025. So it's going back. It feels like forever ago, but it also feels like yesterday. It's kind of a strange one, but more of that to come. I mean, Behind the Legend, I mean, it's just that these are legends. Like, we'd certainly have a hit list of legends, but we're being very careful of like who we bring on in that realm. And there's just some incredible people out there, and we have a pretty cool list of people to come this year. So a lot more of that. And, we're not shying away from it. We want like true legends on that series. So more of that to come. And maybe Deryk, you can kind of just highlight some other notable guests that we've had this year.
Yeah. So I think it's mentioned, but 32 total podcasts were done last year, it's awesome. And, all of them have just great content for agents. We touched on this already, but Justin Noda, we did a podcast with him recently just about, his role, his background, what he's going to be doing within a better way. He's launched his own podcast, Broker Armor Podcast. We did a podcast with Danny and Chris, who are our internal BRMs, also active agents. So they're part of that white glove onboarding service, and just about the role and their background. We actually did a podcast which was related to our conference, which was a realtor panel, 4 or 5 top realtors, local realtors that spent about an hour talking about what they want to see from mortgage brokers. So really cool. If you haven't listened to that one, I would. Tom Hall from Blue Mortgage CRM came on and spoke with Dean. We had Dr. Sherry Cooper to talk about the craziness of the world and tariffs and everything that were happening at that time. Another really good session. Craig Vetter, a close friend of ours and a mortgage broker business coach that we have nothing but great things to say about. Really good session with him. And Mortgage Logic News, which if you're not subscribed, you should. Awesome content from Rob McLister. We had him come on and talk about everything that he does. So, we could go on and on and on. These are going to continue ongoing. They're going to get better every year. I just wanted to touch on the Behind the Broker series. When we first started the podcast, it was a lot of us, right? It was a lot of this. And we quickly realized that we needed to find a way to spotlight our agents, get them in, talk to them. We wanted them to be able to share their experiences and, their tactics to grow and improve. And it's been a huge, huge improvement. And it's, to Jason's point, it's really deepened the relationship and helped us understand what these people are doing behind the scenes and, the effort that goes in and everything that people juggle, mom of 2 or 3 kids that's, doing 40, 50 million bucks. It's really cool to see that side of it. So yeah, it's going to continue. And anyone listening, if you have suggestions on future podcasts, we're all ears.
Yeah, with that too, like if you're a listener, whether you're in the industry, an executive role or a mortgage broker out there that want, to jump on the show and have something unique or interesting to share that could be helpful for the industry, like we're certainly open to that. So don't hesitate to reach out. Like ultimately, this content we feel matters for the industry, and we're going to continue to make sure the content that we deliver is content that's going to help everyone in the industry. So if you think you can play a part in that and you're looking for a platform, definitely reach out. Let's kind of move on here. What we wanted to talk about was our events in the community, building connection, all those things. It's a big part of our culture. We're lucky. Honestly, we're blessed to have, we talked about the behind a broker and just the people that are in this brokerage. They really come together from a community perspective. Like the best of the best are really operating here within this brokerage. And that's why we're so blessed, is that we get to surround ourselves with, like-minded individuals that are just constantly trying to be, the best of the best and be that elite caliber mortgage broker, and coming together as a community, being collaborative, sharing, their tips, tactics, and just, building friendships that I think, become really family type relationships. It comes from the events, it comes from the community. That's what we want to just share about right now. So obviously it reinforces the culture and the belonging. But, one thing that was, I would say, most impactful for me, and that continues to be most impactful, is just the charity stuff that we've been able to do as a group. Backpack Buddies, it was our chosen charity again for 2025. It's going to be a big part of our plan for 2026. Backpack Buddies is limited to the lower mainland Vancouver region. So we've certainly been working and chatting closely with other charities, and there's a lot more of that to come. But, the volunteer days, those are obviously special moments. So why don't we just touch on that a little bit and some of the other charity stuff that we did and when we haven't coming up.
Yeah, I mean, Backpack Buddies is a charity that we're fortunate enough to be introduced to from Ivanka with Equitable Bank. And, being a father of kids, the thought of kids going home on the weekends hungry and not having any food, I mean, it hits you a little bit different when you have your own kids. So that's something that I've really kind of dove into and found a deep passion and like to support. So getting some of our brokers to come out and pack lunches for kids so they don't go home hungry on the weekend is necessary. We should do it if we can. And it's, of course, a great cause and a good feeling to do that. Hanging around our peers and our brokers, packing those lunches, it just brings you closer together. So yeah, I mean, lots of cool things like that. A charity hockey game that Sharon Davis had started putting on. I think we're 2 years into that now. Is it 2?
Yeah, 2 years into that one. And that's a very cool one. And that's a charity again, you get introduced to these people from, collaborative relationships. Sharon Davis, a great, advocate of the industry, another person that's at every single event, not a broker with A Better Way. She's a broker with DLC Producers West. That charity hockey game is a testament to just the industry coming together. There's, brokerage owners from, all different networks, a part of that make that happen. Lenders supporting that. The citywide guys, Deryk, Wayne, Ma, putting the colors aside and just, working together to put that game on. That obviously grew this year too. That was their second annual year. They went from 2 teams to 4 teams. So Better Way had a team for both years. Happy to say we are the back-to-back champs, looking for our 3-peat this year. So look out for that. And why I wanted to touch on that one is the City Reach is the charity that we support in that game. And we are working closely with City Reach this year. We're going to be volunteering at their facilities. That's another group that's supporting kids. Hunger with kids is actually a massive, massive issue. And, they have a really unique angle to support kids and get food to kids. And we'll be interviewing them on the podcast this year and doing some cool stuff there, volunteering with them. So, rolling into the education, the business events, the Ascend Mortgage Summit Conference, we did our 2nd annual in 2025. Our 3rd annual is coming up in a couple of weeks here. It's our biggest flagship event of the year. We're leveling up that event each and every year. So this year, we're really looking forward to it. Great speakers. Sean Kanungo, who was the keynote at MPC, New York best-selling author, the most in-demand speaker right now in North America when it comes to the real estate and finance industry, and is laser focused on AI and and just how to humanize AI from the benefits of just having more connection with humans and how to leverage that. So really looking forward to that conference and Sean's presentation. For anyone that was at MPC, would have had the pleasure of seeing him there. And we're looking forward to his new content and, just the world of AI. Something's changing, something's new every day. So, looking forward to him and what he's got to come. And yeah, maybe we can just kind of touch on some of the flagship events that we were able to host and everything around that.
For the first time, we did a top 50 exclusive event. So that was for all of our award winners at a really cool luxury car dealership, catered drinks, food. It was just a night of fun and recognition. So that's definitely going to continue. In Calgary, we hosted a mastermind session actually at the Equitable Bank office, which was beautiful. So just an in-depth 2-hour mastermind, all things brokering, followed by lunch and drinks with the crew. And speed dating, which these are just unbelievable events. I'm surprised more people don't do them, but we'll fill a room with, 10 lenders, either alternative or private. We separate those two on each event. We did 6 of these throughout the year. We did 2 in Ontario and 4 in BC. So 10 lenders, about 100 agents at each. You spend about 12 to 15 minutes per lender, and you just walk out of there with your brain spinning a little bit, but you've just soaked in and reminded yourself of all the policies and programs that are out there. Most brokers walk out of there submitting a deal. Every lender walks out of there getting a few deals. They're 2 hours social with food and some cocktails and drinks afterwards. So just an awesome, event. They typically fill up in about a week once we announce them. So those will absolutely continue and will be bigger and better. And yeah, just getting into some of the social and kind of fun culture type events, which are, it's important because brokering could be a very lonely business. If you're working on your own, if you don't have a team, a lot of people are just in their house, slamming the keyboard all day. So a flagship event for sure, Summer Mingler. I think we had 150 or 180 people out to Sky Hangar and Pitt Meadows. The first 100 people that registered actually got to go up in a helicopter for a fly, which was really cool and eye-opening. A lot of people haven't had that opportunity to have that experience. So it was really cool to see that happen. And so another one, we went out to Calgary and spent the day at Mickelson Golf, which is similar to a Top Golf driving range with games, food, drinks. So really cool event. Our Ontario team had a beautiful summer party actually at our partner's house in Orangeville. Beautiful pool on an acreage full of animals. Christmas parties were a big hit this year, both in Ontario and BC. Our BC event was just a few weeks ago now, and I think we had about 250 people there at Northview Golf Course. And we did it during the day this year with an after party for the folks that wanted to join afterwards, and a huge success. And kind of to wrap up that piece, our Ontario team had a really cool engagement this year, which was actually a weekly walk and talk. So every week, I don't know if they're doing it right now because of the minus 40 or minus 60 weather, but all year they were meeting up weekly, bringing out, lenders, brokers, and just going for a walk and chatting the business. So lots of cool stuff going on. And we have some really cool, unique, different events coming up this year.
Like typical BC comment, minus 40, minus 60. It's probably like minus 5, but it feels like minus 60 to us out here on the West Coast with our sunshine and mild rain. Mild rain.
No sunshine.
One thing I just want to touch on the speed dating events that Deryk mentioned, the 2 that we did in Ontario. It's our first time Better Ways hosted speed dating events in Ontario, and they're a huge success. Those actually sold out really quickly. And to echo Deryk's comments, those are just really value-packed events from a perspective of walking out of there with knowledge. The helicopter, like Deryk mentioned, like how many people had never stepped in a helicopter before. And it was actually surprising. And not that I'm, some avid helicopter traveler, but it was just kind of cool to see like how many people had never done that before. It's funny, like my mom is actually a flight attendant, or was a flight attendant for 40 plus years with Air Canada. And she was telling me she's never been in a helicopter. I was just blown away to hear that somebody in that space had never been there. But again, cool experience and more of that to come. Like with these types of flagship events, obviously it's around community building relationships. Of course, that's the main focus, but also just like looking to do cool experiences that, we all have never really got to do before. And so more of that to come. Lastly, we did launch a preferred lender program this year. And these preferred lenders, they're really chosen by our brokers. Like we went to the top lenders that our brokers do the most volume with and developed a more of an exclusive type of a partnership with these lenders. And because of that, not just, putting on events, but they did put on just over 7 exclusive events that were put on by lenders specifically for A Better Way, either educational events like Vault just did one recently. around, finding more business with self-employed clients, the ideal center of influence to target and how to target them and best practices and where to find certain deals that fall in this bucket. Stuff like that was a big focus for us with those lenders. And because of those partnerships and sinking more time, more effort into those partners allowed us to get benefits like these types of events. And whether it was, increased compensation for certain periods of time in the year, or, just more focus on extra value, whether it was, quicker turnarounds, more elite staff, more just engagement with leadership, looking at the podcast. Some of the Behind the Lender series, well, pretty much all of the Behind the Lender series were brought to you by preferred lenders, and spending the time of, a lot of them traveled, substantial distance just to jump on those podcasts, because we did every one of them in person. And again, more of that to come. We've expanded the preferred partner program. We have more value coming from our preferred partners this year for our team. And for anyone that's listening that's, not a part of Better Way, that wants to either, learn more about that or implement that for your own team, definitely reach out. We're more than happy to share what that success was all about, because it was a huge success. And, just around, touching on some of those events, that was, like I mentioned, Vault, PHL did something similar at the Morgan Creek Golf Course. Equitable Bank just goes above and beyond with those types of events for us. Spending time at their office, spending time with, educational events, social events. Sequence Capital, Manulife Protection Plan, Mario Cluche, just a huge, huge supporter of us and our team. RFA, always there with those types of support pieces. Glass Lake became a big new kind of partner for us, just being more, newer to the space. And they saw a lot of growth this year within the industry and within our group. Again, just can't say enough about the thanks that we have for those folks and the partnerships that they've provided. So looking to kind of just wrap this up, kind of the last piece that I wanted to touch on was just the systems and the infrastructure improvements. Maybe we can just kind of touch on some of that, like the intranet enhancement. So the intranet is really the core of our brokerage. Really everything and anything that we do for our team and our brokerage is found and housed on the ABW intranet. We spend a ton of time on this. We're updating this piece of software every single day, whether it's, training recordings, tools that we're developing, tools that have been shared to us by other brokers, events, everything is found here. So maybe we can kind of touch on that a little bit. The Lender Open Renewal Guide, maybe Deryk, you can touch on that one.
Yeah, just one small example. I mean, it's a spreadsheet that we built that actually summarizes every single lender in the channel's open renewal guides. So when your clients are coming up for renewal, you can scan that guide to better understand, are they going to lock them into a 6-month close? Do we need to get ahead of it? Do they need to call the lender? That's one, just minor example of some of the additions there. But the piece I wanted to touch on, and a big focus for us this year, was actually working a lot closer with Heather Cermak from DLCG. She's an RVP and she's dedicated to the A Better Way account. And we've really taken some time to introduce her to the group. She's been an absolutely fabulous addition to the brokerage this year. And the purpose of that is to make sure that all of our agents have a very good understanding of the tools and resources available to them from the network, right? And this is, it happens in our industry. People are with different networks and, they end up leaving because they don't think there's value. And it's half the time it's because they don't understand the value. They're not using the resources. They're not using the tools. So a big push from our side was to make sure that every agent had the resources, the phone calls, the meetings to be able to go through the resources and action those into their business. And I got to tell you, I got off a call with one of our agents this week that said that her call with Heather has been so enlightening. She's engaged. She's got Gold Rush set up in Velocity, and it's instantly been working for her. She's hearing from clients that she hasn't heard from in years. So that's been a really big improvement. And just kudos to Heather for being an amazing person, just all over it. So that's been huge for us and our agents, and we'll continue that.
Speed and efficiency is key, right? So the enhancements to the infrastructure and the internet, that's to house everything in one site. So you guys have all the information that you need whenever you need it on demand. And, I'd echo everything Deryk said about Heather, having somebody to point to as a liaison and a go-to for DLCG resources that, are often or could be underutilized by brokers across the country. I think, it's just been massive enhancements, and you've seen, just tremendous amount of improvement from production levels and every source of the business.
Yeah, you know what? There's so much here. Like, we didn't even get to like everything, and we're gone on long enough. And if you're not with the Better Way Brokerage and you're still listening to this podcast and you want to learn more, like, we'll share everything that we've talked about here. We have a lot of cool stuff to come. So a lot of this stuff that we're talking about when it comes to training, webinars, we're going to be opening a lot of this up to the industry. So certainly stay posted on that. We have a very powerful session series, actually, a webinar series coming out very early on in the year too. So if you're interested in anything that you've heard here, just put a comment in the show notes or wherever you're hearing this, send us an email, reach out however you want, go to our website, join abw.ca. There's a few spots there to actually capture some of these playbooks that we put together over the years. So whatever it is, whatever, maybe piqued your interest, don't hesitate to reach out. We're wanting to share more and more this year. And it's a big reason why we're opening up our webinar series to the industry. So yeah, we'll cut it there. So again, thank you for listening. This was a long one. We got a lot to come this year. We can't wait to show you all that, and, stay posted on the podcast, because this is going to continue to be, the main hub of resources and source for all of what we're doing.
From my end, just a big thank you to all of you. The support that you give Dean, Deryk, and myself, and your fellow brokers from within A Better Way. We couldn't ask to work with better people, better brokers, and it's going to be a great year ahead. And we couldn't do it without awesome people like you attached to us every day.
Yeah, I'm just very fortunate to A, be in this industry. I think we all need to pinch ourselves once in a while, and B, to get to work with the people that we do, right? We come into work every day with a passion to help and bring value to the brokers with A Better Way. And we're not slowing down by any means. So thanks for listening, and all the best.
Not much more to say than that. Celebrate the wins when you can. Like, for a lot of people, like we talked about, it was a record year, or at least a better year than what it was in the past. So celebrate those wins, and we'll be on to the next one. And thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. If you found value in this show, please subscribe to our channel on your preferred platform. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Your support is incredibly appreciated. We also welcome your reviews and feedback, which are crucial in helping us deliver outstanding educational content. Feel free to share your thoughts. A 5-star review would be fantastic if you think we earned it. Lastly, a vital announcement about Backpack Buddies, our chosen charity for 2025. This remarkable organization addresses a hidden hunger issue many are unaware of in British Columbia. While school districts provide meals during school hours, numerous children face food scarcity at home, particularly during the weekends. Backpack Buddies steps in to support these vulnerable children, ensuring they have easy-to-prepare, familiar food for weekends. This is achieved through collaborations with schools and an extensive distribution network. Your contribution can make a significant difference. With just $20, you can give a child in need a food bag from Backpack Buddies filled with enough meals and snacks to sustain them over the weekend and more. Once again, thank you for listening, and see you on the next one.